moving on with another screenshot of the Salesforce page. You can see the navigation at the top. This is an opportunity, meaning it's not a current account. It's something someone has been working on, some new business. And this is the sort of information that comes up. Lead source has an order number now to track it. It's got an amount that could possibly be, I'm only expecting 10% of that. Or maybe I'm even assigning the form that I fill out, I'm giving it a 10% probability, so it's only going to project $25,000 in revenue. It might be set up like that. Close date is when the contract's going to be signed, and I'm going to get it back. That's the deal closing. Contract signed and returned is close date. Oh yeah, probability 10%. You see it right there. What stage is it in? This is where, have I submitted a contract? Is the contract approved? If I had my first meeting and presentation? So this says prospecting, which says it's pretty early on in the sales process. That's, I'm sure, one reason why it has such a low probability. And this even gives me a field here to list who I'm probably competing with. So this is not current business that I'm running and trying to renew. This is some new business that I'm working on, and I'm capturing this in Salesforce too. Whoop. Now here's where I can look up activity, another screenshot of the Salesforce page. So open activity. See where it says new task, new event, new meeting request. I can click some of these buttons and I can schedule, send a response email or send a contract or schedule a meeting, whatever it is. I can schedule a task. It can be linked to my calendar, my Google Calendar or whatever, and it'll give me reminders, maybe send me an email reminder to get the task done on the day it's due. Here's where I've captured a conversation. And actually, I should be able to click the link on the conversation and open up whatever the conversation was. So not only can it remind me before I call the person, my last conversation, my boss could even keep track of, what's going on in a piece of business and what the conversations were, which is something that can protect the boss and or the company should a salesperson or a valued employee who's handling accounts leave or quit the company, as is the case with Lester Wunderman. Okay, so we've looked at a couple of screenshots. I mean, you could look at 100 screenshots in Salesforce. It's very complex software, but you get the idea. Salespeople do most of the inputting of data. It's to help them manage the relationship with their B2B accounts, B2B customers. It's to help them prospect. It's also to help management forecast, because you put in whatever sales you're expecting by what date it's going to close with a percent probability. That can all be pulled together, and I can look at how much revenue is going to come into the company, in 3 months' time or 6 months' time or 9 months' time. I can see how many prospects are in my pipeline, how many people have gotten contracts that are renewal customers or new customers. What's the likelihood of renewal or of them signing a contract? That way I can do projections, revenue projections. If I'm the CFO, financial officer of the company, I can plan cash flow. So the contract signed, do they pay us every month? Do they pay us after the contract signed? I can figure out cash flow. So Salesforce really becomes this integral kind of spine and skeleton and blood veins or whatever, that's sort of, maybe veins is better, that's kind of all around everything the company's doing. Okay? And it's used by everybody in a company. It's built to do that. Sales, accounting, marketing, and senior management. So I'm going to just now talk about some of my experiences with Salesforce and similar software, and maybe help sort of expand the reality communication about what kind of really goes on in a company with a CRM database platform. So, one of the early things that's done when you start to talk to a new account, for instance, you put in the basic, publicly available company information, address, phone number, website. You saw that on one of the first screenshots. Then you want to find out some more about the company. So obviously you also want to know what segment of business they're in, right? That's publicly available. Intelligence might be number of employees. They may not publish that, but maybe your salesperson can get that. Planning and purchase cycles are not published by companies. That's their own business. But a salesperson who is starting to talk to a company should be finding that out. I mean, when are they up for renewal? When did they sign a new contract with your competitor versus going with me? And if it's next week and I just started talking to them, I'm probably not going to get the business for another year, right? If it's a current customer, once again, I need this information so I can plan accordingly. So info from salespeople goes into Salesforce. And here I'm thinking this is what Joe Girardi wished he had. Remember the auto salesman who was so successful, basically because he somehow, without computers and in a real database or really much electronic help at all, except a telephone and an electric typewriter probably, he's recording information about customers and doing methodical follow-up with them. But he has to get the information first. So the salesperson is who's going to know names and contact information for key decision makers and decision influencers at a client, at a company. And beyond just names and contact info and maybe a link to their LinkedIn profile, what other information is useful to have about these people? And this is where we get into the area of it becomes more like a personal database, really. Okay, so what are their families' names? Okay, and ages. Okay, where is her daughter going to college? What is her birthday? What's her anniversary? What's the dog's name? Or the cat or the fish? Okay, so you're really wanting the sale as a salesperson. You want to get this information and put it down so it's not just in your head. And here's where you also, it would be great if there was a place to put some kind of psychographic or personality type information. And the thought here is that before a salesperson picks up a telephone to make a very important call to a client, and these calls may not be frequent, it may just be, a couple a year, that salesperson wants to look all this up. She wants to look up the previous conversations. What did we talk about, 2 months ago? Is there anything I didn't follow up on? She wants to look at, names and birthdays and everything else so that the person is ready to, it helps build a relationship. Okay. Now, beyond that, what is recorded in Salesforce is every time there's some kind of step in the sales process, whether it's a current customer or a new customer, that you want to capture that. And companies will probably want to customize Salesforce for whatever steps in the sales process they think are important. Typical ones are, I had a phone conversation, scheduled a meeting, we had our first meeting, we responded to concerns from the first meeting, we sent a proposal, we got comments on the proposal, we sent a contract, we had a second meeting with more senior people, proposals approved, right? Final approval, contract, as I say, is sent, contract awaiting signature, and then, of course, when the business closes is when you get the signed contract. So the salesperson normally has it in her head about where the business is, but sales management and senior management want to look at, how are these accounts progressing? Is the salesperson moving them along towards closing or not? Right. And as I think I said before, salesperson can also make detailed notes about meetings and phone calls. And even if they write a meeting report, which is often a good idea for a salesperson, the meeting report would be sent to the client, particularly if it's a current client. Would go to the company's management, your company's management. That's often a good idea after a meeting where a bunch of stuff is discussed, just the way you guys do it for your team project meetings. Now, out of this, as you saw with one of the screenshots where the person put down $250,000, possible deal, okay, but with a 10% probability. So in other words, I can only tell you maybe 25,000 will come in now. If you really want to put a number in the forecast, it's $25,000. So salespeople also have got to do these revenue projections per account, whether it's a renewal account. Is it going to they're going to spend as much as they spent last year? Or they had cutbacks? Is it going to go up? What's my plan to make it go up? So they're putting in amounts, what they think the business will be worth, and they're assigning probability. And probability is usually linked to stage of the sales process. So, for instance, if you have a proposal approved for $250,000, the probability isn't 10% anymore, right? It's probably 50% or more. If you've sent a contract and it's waiting for signature, but it's gotten verbal approval and your contact has told you management has approved it, but it's not signed, it's probably 90%, right? So the probabilities are linked to the stage of the process. As I think I mentioned before, salespeople can also schedule follow-ups. This is an important use of the CRM, particularly if a salesperson has 20 or 30 or 40 accounts and a lot going on and might forget otherwise to stay on top of things. He or she can schedule regular, touch bases or emails or whatever it is. This is another thing Joe Girardi wishes he had, because remember, he was sending little notes to people. He's also sending birthday cards, by the way, right? And holiday cards. But Joe Girardi did this on his own without a database. And here's another thing that can be done. This can actually be done not by the salesperson, but this can be built into your Salesforce application, where if you've got a current customer and their 3-year contract it expires in December 31st, and they want to negotiate the renewal by October 1st, then the salesperson is going to get reminders before October 1st to touch base with the customer, make sure things are good, go out for a face-to-face meeting, whatever it is. There are going to be some automatic reminders built in, by account, by client, based on their sales cycle. A few more little things. Sales bosses also like Salesforce, not just for the revenue forecasts and just for the structure and the reminders it gives the salespeople. It's also a way for the sales bosses to check up on the salesperson. The boss can track how many meetings and phone calls they have per day and per week. And their boss is often giving them a key performance indicator of you've got to do 3 face-to-face calls a day. And if the person isn't doing it, then the boss can track that. And of course, sales projections can be done for that particular sales territory. It can be contrasted with or indexed against the previous year where we were in terms of sales a year ago. I can look at the sales projection for each seller. I can look at what the sales projection is for the account versus the previous year. So there's a sales manager, not senior management, but someone maybe running a region or territory. There are lots of things I can do here. And plus, and this is where we get Lester Wunderman, if a key salesperson quits or is fired, the sales manager and management can go into Salesforce and really get up to date on the account. Where is it in terms of the contract? What were the last meetings? What's been discussed? So it's not just somebody walking out the door and taking all this information with them. It's the information is captured in Salesforce, and it means that management can put another seller in there. Maybe they miss a beat. You've got to introduce another seller, and they've got to build a relationship, but at least you're not starting from zero. And by the way, salespeople know this, and that's one reason why they don't like filling information in Salesforce, because they're